You have been told all your life that miracles take time. You have been told that money must come slowly, that prosperity belongs only to the very few, that you must struggle and strive and wait for some distant blessing to notice you. You have been told that God sits far away, that you are small and helpless, and that perhaps, if you suffer enough, if you wait long enough, He may one day decide to favor you. Tonight I have come to tell you that all of that is false, not unkind, not mistaken only in part, but utterly false. There is a hidden code within you, a living word buried in your own being, that overturns the whole superstition of delay. If you dare to speak it before midnight, not as a beggar, but as one who knows who he is, you will feel money, opportunities, and blessings move toward you with a speed that will startle you. I know you are tired of hearing promises. You have read books, you have listened to sermons, you have tried methods, you have repeated phrases, you have written lines in little notebooks. You have whispered prayers in the dark. You have heard men tell you that if you work harder, if you think more positively, if you give more, if you obey more, then perhaps life will reward you. And still the bills arrive on time, while the money creeps in late. Still the doors you long to walk through remain shut. Still you look at your hands and ask yourself, what am I doing wrong? Why does it work for others and not for me? I know that torment, for I have sat in rooms filled with men and women just like you, their faces worn with effort, their eyes bright with hope, and yet heavy with disappointment. You have prayed, and some part of you has wondered whether anyone heard. You have spoken affirmations, and another part of you has whispered, this is only talk. You have tried to imagine abundance, but the clinking of coins in another man's pocket sounded louder than the soft picture in your own mind. You have been faithful according to the light you had, and you have suffered according to the ignorance you were taught. And I say to you, with tenderness, but with absolute firmness, the fault has never been in your sincerity. The fault has never been in your desire. The fault has never been in your worthiness. The difficulty has been only this: you were never taught how the creative power truly works, and you were never shown the name by which that power moves. Tonight, I will not ask you to believe in anything outside of yourself. I will not ask you to put your faith in a system, in a man, in a church, in a ritual. I will lead you back to the only altar where miracles have ever begun, the altar of your own awareness of being. There is within you a simple, living word. You speak it every day, 100 times, and yet you speak it in ignorance. When you join it to poverty, it builds poverty. When you join it to lack, it builds lack. When you join it to fear, it clothes itself in circumstances that frighten you. And when you join it to wealth, to freedom, to abundance, it moves the whole world to bring those very things to your door. That word is I am. Before this night is over, you will not only hear it, you will feel it as the hidden code that changes your life. Perhaps as you listen to me now, there are bills on your table, quietly accusing you. Perhaps there is a debt that seems to grow as you sleep. Perhaps you are living by the kindness of others, or by wages that barely cover your needs. You say to yourself, if I could only attract money faster, if I could only see one proof, one sign that something greater is at work. I tell you, the sign has been there since your earliest breath. Every time you said, I am tired, I am broke, I am unlucky, I am afraid, the invisible power within you bowed its head and answered, Amen, and set about to make those words flesh. Not to punish you, but because that is its nature. It is creative, not selective. It does not choose what to create. It only obeys the direction you give it with your feeling. You have been living under an illusion of delay. You think money must come slowly, because you have been taught that time stands between you and your desire. You have been told to wait for God's good time, as though God were some landlord counting the days on a calendar before releasing a blessing. But listen carefully. Time is not an obstacle. It is only the distance between your present state of consciousness and the state you dare to assume. The moment you change your inner state, the outer must begin to rearrange itself. Sometimes that rearrangement is swift as a flash. Sometimes it unfolds over days or weeks. But in truth, the miracle begins the very instant you dare to be different within yourself. Tonight we will pierce that illusion of delay. We will use the very rhythm of the day itself, this passing from evening into midnight, as a symbol. For midnight, as I shall show you, is not merely a number on a clock. Midnight is the moment the old day dies and the new one is born. Midnight is the point where what has been cannot follow you, and what shall be is waiting to be conceived. Between one tick of the clock and the next, the house of yesterday collapses, and the foundation of tomorrow is laid in your own imagination. You stand on that threshold every single night, usually half asleep to the power in your hands. Tonight, I would have you cross it with your eyes open. You say to me, Neville, I have heard good words before. I have been told to think positively, to declare abundance, to expect good things. I have done all of that, and still I feel stuck. And I answer you, my dear, you have been given the shell without the kernel, the body without the breath. You have been told to repeat words as though they were charms, without being shown why words move anything at all. You have been told to make lists of desires, to speak phrases in the air, to attend meetings and recite formulas. But no one has sat you down and said, the power is in your I am. When you join that holy name to any state, you clothe yourself in that state, and the world must treat you accordingly. So of course you feel guilty when it does not work. Of course you turn the whip inward and strike yourself. You say, if this is true, I must be weak. I must be foolish. Perhaps I have ruined everything with one doubt, and I tell you, nothing is ruined. Not a single word spoken in fear is beyond redemption, because the same power that accepted that fear will accept a new direction. You are never more than one assumption away from a new life. You have not failed because you doubted. You have simply been wandering without a map. Tonight I place the map in your hands. In the next moments, I will lead you step by step into the heart of the law. I will show you why every word is a seed, why the earth that receives those seeds is your own subconscious mind, and why the harvest you are living now is nothing more nor less than the story you have been telling yourself with your inner speech. I will show you why midnight, this quiet hour when the world grows still and your body sinks towards sleep, is the most powerful moment to plant a new seed. And then I will give you the hidden code itself, not as a superstition, but as a living practice you can use tonight before you close your eyes. As you listen, I ask only this of you. Set aside, for this 1 hour, every belief that has ever told you you are small. Set aside the voices that said you were unworthy, the doctrines that painted God as far away, the memories of past failures that whisper, nothing will change. You are not here by accident. No one arrives at these words by chance. Something in you has grown tired of the old story. Something deeper in you has brought you to this moment as surely as a seed is drawn upward by the sun. You may not fully believe me yet, and that is all right. I do not ask for perfect faith. I ask only that you be willing to test what you hear. Tonight will not be another exercise in wishing. I am not asking you to wish. I am asking you to assume. I am not asking you to wait. I am asking you to be. By the time we reach the end of this journey together, you will understand why a single, quiet declaration spoken in the stillness before midnight can do more than years of anxious effort. You will understand why the world around you, your income, your opportunities, the so-called luck that has seemed to favor others, has always been an obedient servant of your inner speech. And you will understand that the name of God is not a distant word carved into stone, but the simple, living awareness in you that says, I am. Do not worry if, as I speak, your mind wanders to your problems. I expect it will. Your mind has been trained to bow before the evidence of the senses. It has been told that the figures on a piece of paper, the balance in a ledger, the opinions of employers and bankers and relatives are the final truth. I will show you that they are only shadows, and that you have been trying to change the shadow while ignoring the light that casts it. Once you touch that light, once you claim the lamp of your own consciousness, the shadow must change of itself. So I say to you at the very beginning, there is a code. It is hidden in plain sight. It is not complicated. So a child can use it. A woman cooking in her kitchen can use it. A man walking home in the rain can use it. It is not reserved for the clever, nor for the educated, nor for those who know sacred languages. It is the simplest phrase in your tongue, and yet it contains within it the power to attract money, to reverse circumstances, to transform the most hopeless situation into a testimony of grace. Speak this code before midnight, in the way I shall show you, and you will begin to feel the world rearrange itself around your new assumption. But before I place that code upon your lips, I must prepare your understanding. For if I simply told you, say these words, you might repeat them as parrots repeat sounds, without knowing what they do. I want you to understand why they work, so that you can stand upon this law with confidence and never again be a victim of chance. In a moment, we shall go down to the very root of creation itself. We shall look at the first words ever spoken, at the declaration that began the world, and you will see that they are the same words you have been using all along, only joined to wrong things. Stay with me. Do not let your attention wander. This is not a tale for your amusement. It is a map for your deliverance. As we go on, I will take you by the hand, and we will walk together from the land of someday into the land of I am. And when at last you lie down tonight, and the clock draws near to 12, you will know exactly what to do, exactly what to speak, and exactly how to feel, so that the life you have longed for can begin, not next year, not in some vague future, but in the invisible depths of your own being, this very night. When I first began to understand this law, I saw with startling clarity that men were living in a world of harvest, without ever remembering what they had planted. They complained of the crop as though it were a strange accident, as though life had singled them out for either cruelty or favor. And yet, every condition of their lives was only the natural and perfect outpicturing of the words they had sown within themselves. For a word is never idle. A word is never empty. A word is a seed. That which you speak of yourself with feeling sinks into the deeper soil of your being, and in its own season rises as flesh and circumstance. The subconscious mind does not argue with your words. It does not ask whether they are good or bad, wise or foolish. It simply accepts them as commands and sets about to fulfill them with mechanical faithfulness. I have told audiences in New York and elsewhere that the mind of man is like the earth beneath his feet. The farmer does not beg the soil to produce wheat instead of thistles. He does not plead with it, nor threaten it, nor reason with it. He simply plants the kind of seed he desires to reap. If he sows wheat, wheat must grow. If he sows weeds, weeds must appear. The earth makes no distinction between a noble seed and a worthless one. It gives life to both with equal devotion. So it is with your subconscious mind. It gives form to every assumption you plant within it. It does not know that your words are spoken in jest, or in fear, or in despair. It hears only the feeling with which you speak them, and it answers with a harvest that matches that feeling exactly. You have said many things about yourself in quiet moments when no one else was listening. You have said them in the secrecy of your heart, when pretense fell away, and you spoke what you truly believed. Perhaps you said, I am unlucky. Perhaps you said, I am always left out. Perhaps you said, I am too old now, or I am not clever enough, or I am always struggling. And because you spoke those words with the quiet conviction of one who thought he was simply being honest, the great womb of your subconscious received them and shaped your world accordingly. You did not see the connection then, and so you thought the events of your life were coming from outside causes, from other people, from circumstances, from fate. But I tell you, they were all rising from the same hidden ground, the ground of your own inner speech. Once, a woman came to me in deep distress. She had suffered loss after loss in business, and she said to me, Neville, I do not understand it. Every time I begin, something goes wrong. I asked her, quietly and gently, what do you say to yourself when you think of business? At first, she protested that she was optimistic, but after a moment of silence, tears came to her eyes, and she said, I always feel that it will fail in the end. I say, it never works for me. There, in that single sentence, was the seed of every failure she had experienced. We changed nothing in her outer world. We changed only that one sentence. Night after night, she fell asleep saying, with quiet feeling, I am successful. Things work for me. In a matter of weeks, opportunities came where there had been none. And the same woman who had once called herself unlucky now called herself blessed. The law had not changed. Only the seed had changed. You see now why I say that your life is not a punishment nor a reward in the moral sense, but a mirror of your assumptions. Men do not reap what they want, they reap what they sow. And they sow not with their lips alone, but with the deep inner feeling that follows their words like a shadow. Two people may speak the same sentence, I am prosperous, and one will reap abundance, while the other will see nothing change. The difference is not in the sound of the words, but in the conviction that breathes life into them. The subconscious mind responds to the tone of certainty as the soil responds to the warmth of the sun. It is the feeling that gives the word its creative power. Long before I ever stood on a platform to speak of these things, I encountered this truth in the scriptures. I read that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. I read it for years without seeing it. I thought of the Word as something spoken long ago, something that belonged to the past. But the day came when I understood that the Word is not a sound lost in history. The Word is the living declaration of being that you are uttering right now, in this very moment, as you say within yourself, I am. That is the beginning of everything. That is the moment where the invisible takes on direction, where the formless begins to shape itself into form. When it is said that the Word was with God, and the Word was God, it is telling you that your awareness of being and the creative power are one and the same. You are not speaking into emptiness when you say, I am. You are speaking with the voice of the creative principle itself, and whatever you dare to attach to that name becomes, in due season, a fact in your world. This is why men are warned not to take the name of God in vain. It has nothing to do with profane speech, as the world imagines. To take the name in vain is to attach it to something that you do not truly wish to be, or to continue as, when you say, I am poor, you have taken the most sacred name and fastened it to a condition of lack. When you say, I am sick, you have clothed the divine name in weakness, and the law being faithful brings forth exactly what you have named yourself. In every audience I have ever addressed, there were men and women who did not know that they had been prophesying their own future day after day. They thought they were simply describing their present condition. They said, I am tired, I am worried, I am unlucky, never dreaming that they were speaking the language of creation. They imagined that the creative act belonged to God alone, while they themselves were merely creatures. And yet the truth, hidden in plain sight, is that God creates by means of your very awareness of being. The word is not spoken once for all. At the beginning of the world, it is spoken anew in every human heart, with every quiet assumption of I am. Do you see now why your past has fulfilled the words you spoke of it? Not because you deserved what came, but because you named it before it arrived. The farmer does not blame the earth for producing what he planted. He only changes his seed if he desires a different harvest. And you too, if you would change your life, must change the words you allow to fall with feeling into the deeper levels of your mind. There is no other way. You may travel miles, change companions, alter your outward habits. But if you carry the same inner speech with you, you will produce the same story in new surroundings. Once I knew a man who changed cities 3 times, always in search of better fortune. In each place, he found the same poverty, the same disappointments, the same sense of struggle. At last he said to me, in despair, everywhere I go, it is the same. And I answered him, yes, because everywhere you go, you take yourself with you. He had been planting the same seed in every soil. The law did not follow him. It was within him. When he at last learned to change his inner conversation, to speak to himself as one who was wanted, supported, and prosperous, the very city he had once called cruel became generous and open to him. The world had not changed. He had changed the seed. Now I must warn you with great tenderness, because this law is always working. It is most dangerous to use it unconsciously. A man who knows how a machine works and places his hand carelessly among its gears may be injured more swiftly than one who never approaches it at all. So it is with the word. To speak I am is to touch the lever of creation. If you speak it in bitterness, in jealousy, in despair, you are not being punished for your feelings. you are simply reaping the exact fruit of the seed you planted. Therefore, I say to you, become as watchful of your inner speech as a gardener is of his field. Do not allow weeds to grow simply because they arrived uninvited. Uproot them gently the moment you notice them and replace them with the seed you truly wish to harvest. Yet, do not be afraid. This law, though exact, is merciful. You are never bound to yesterday's planting. The soil of your subconscious does not condemn you for what you planted in ignorance. It stands ready at every moment to accept new seed. Even now, as you listen to my words, old assumptions may be loosening within you. You may feel a stirring of hope where resignation once sat. You may feel a quiet thrill at the thought that your future is not fixed by your past. That stirring is the sign that the ground is becoming receptive. Do not stifle it with doubt. Do not say yes, but the moment you add the but, you uproot the new seed before it has time to take hold. As yet, I have not placed the full code upon your lips. I am preparing you for it, as one prepares the earth before sowing the most precious grain. You must understand that words create, not because of their sound, but because of the state of consciousness from which they are spoken. You must understand that your subconscious mind is the faithful servant that never sleeps, never rests, and never ceases to carry your inner speech into form. And you must understand that the phrase I am is perpetually active within you, whether you use it knowingly or in ignorance. In the moments ahead, as we go deeper into this mystery, you will begin to feel the weight and the wonder of this simple truth, that every man is continually speaking himself into existence. Some speak themselves into chains and call it fate. Others speak themselves into freedom and call it blessing. The difference lies not in the world without, but in the word within. When at last you feel this as a living reality, not merely as an idea, you will never again use the name I am carelessly. You will guard it as the most precious thing you possess, for you will know that it is the very key by which worlds are opened and closed. And so I ask you to remain with me a little longer. Let these ideas sink quietly into you as seed sinks quietly into the earth. Do not strain to remember them. Do not argue with them. Simply let them be. For in the stillness that follows true understanding, the old seeds begin to lose their power, and the new ones prepare to rise. In the next movements of our journey together, we shall draw closer to the hidden name itself, and you will begin to see, not in theory but in living experience, how a single phrase, spoken with understanding before you sleep, can begin to reshape the entire course of your life. There is a sacred moment that comes each day, so quiet and so unnoticed that most pass through it as though it were nothing. Yet I tell you, it is the most powerful doorway you touch in all your waking hours. Men call it midnight, but that is only the name the clock has given it. In truth, it is the borderland between worlds. It is the moment when the old day dies and the new has not yet been born. It is the pause between breaths, the hush between heartbeats, the silent gap where all creation waits for instruction. In that still interval, the outer man loosens his grip, and the inner man rises quietly to the throne. You must understand that every day you live is born from the night that preceded it. The world you wake into is not created in the morning by effort or struggle. It is conceived in the dark while your senses sleep. The night is the womb of the day, and midnight is the deepest point of that womb, when the light of reason has faded and the imagination stands alone in the silent chamber of the subconscious. That is why the ancients spoke of revelation as something that comes in the night watches. That is why prophets dreamed and saw visions while the world around them slept. For when the senses are silent, the voice of imagination can be heard without interference. I have watched men strive with all their strength by day and fail again and again. And I have watched the same men alter the course of their lives in a single quiet act before sleep. They labored under the sun and called it effort. They sowed in the dark and called it miracle. Yet it was the same law at work in both cases. The difference was this: in the light of day, reason argues, senses protest, facts shout their opposition. At night, reason grows drowsy, facts retreat into shadow, and imagination rules without rival. The conscious God relaxes his vigilance, and the great fertile depth of the subconscious lies open, ready to receive impression. Midnight is not merely an hour. It is the death of one state and the birth of another. It is the moment when yesterday releases its hold, and tomorrow has not yet taken form. If you knew the power that rests in that interval, you would never again drift into sleep, carrying the burdens of the day. You would enter that sacred pause as a priest enters the holy place, with reverence, with purpose, and with the seed of your desire carefully prepared. For what you place in the mind at that hour descends into a depth where it is no longer resisted, questioned, or judged. It is accepted. And what is accepted, there must rise again as fact. Many times men have come to me with stories they could not explain. They said, "Neville, I fell asleep thinking of this one thing, and the next day my whole world seemed to rearrange itself around that thought." They did not know why it happened. They called it coincidence. But I knew that they had touched the law at the only moment when it works without obstruction. For the last thought before sleep does not remain a thought. It becomes a command. It sinks out of the reach of the waking will and takes root where all commands are executed. I recall a man who had been seeking work for months without success. Day after day, he sent letters, passed from office to office, and heard nothing but refusals. One night, exhausted and discouraged, he fell asleep, imagining that he was already employed. He did not labor over the scene. He simply felt the relief of knowing his search was over. The next morning, before noon had come, the offer arrived. He said, "It happened so suddenly, I scarcely had time to wonder." Yet the wonder had taken place while he slept. The day merely delivered what the night had conceived. Another woman told me that her worries always returned to her at dawn, as if they had waited for her awakening. I asked her what she thought of last, before she slept. She said, "I count my fears as I lie in bed." She was planting them nightly in the richest soil of her being, and wondering why they grew with such vigor. When she learned instead to fall asleep in peace, whispering to herself that all was well, the same law that once multiplied her worries now multiplied her security. The outer world obeyed the last mood of the night, not the complaints of the day. Why is this so? Because sleep is not mere rest. It is a return to the original state from which all form springs. In the darkness behind your closed eyes, you are nearer to the formless than at any other time. You are nearer to the source that precedes all things seen. In that darkness, imagination is not competing with the evidence of the senses. It is not being contradicted by what you see, hear, or touch. It stands alone as the sole reality. That is why an imaginal act performed in the drowsy stillness has more creative force than one strained after in full waking consciousness. The difference between praying by day and planting by night is the difference between speaking into a crowded room and whispering into the ear of one who cannot turn away. By day you may affirm, you may declare, you may visualize, and yet beneath all that effort there remains a quiet protest from the senses that says, "It is not so." That protest weakens the impression. It divides the seed against itself. But at night, when the protest sleeps, the seed falls whole and undivided into the soil. It is received without argument. And what is received without argument must be fulfilled. This is why the scriptures are filled with images of darkness, silence, and sleep as the setting for God's greatest acts. Deep sleep fell upon Adam. Jacob dreamed and saw a ladder set upon the earth. Joseph received his instruction in a dream. These are not tales meant to amuse the mind. They are psychological truths, clothed in poetry. They are telling you that creation moves from the unseen to the seen, from night into day, from dream into fact. They are telling you that the creative acts of God take place where the senses are shut out and imagination stands unveiled. Midnight is the symbolic death of the old self. The man you have been all day, bound to habits, fears, and reactions, lays himself down at that hour. His defenses weaken. His identity softens. For a brief space, You are neither fully the man of yesterday, nor yet the man of tomorrow. You are between states, and in that between, the new image you accept becomes the pattern that the subconscious will clothe with flesh. This is why I tell you that midnight is a gate. On one side stands the self you have known. On the other stands the self you are becoming. What you consent to pass through that gate determines which side you will awaken upon. Many think that transformation requires violent effort, dramatic struggle, or long years of discipline. And yet the most radical changes I have ever witnessed were born in silence, in a single gentle yielding to a new state before sleep. A man does not become another by force, he becomes another by consent. And consent is most easily given when the mind is softened by the approach of sleep. The old identity does not fight for its life in that hour. It loosens its hold as naturally as a garment falling from the shoulders. And in that loosening, the new state may be quietly assumed. You have known moments in your own life when you sensed this without understanding it. You lay awake in the deep night, and a profound thought came to you as though from another world. Or you dreamed a dream so vivid that it seemed more real than waking life. You wondered why such clarity did not come by day. It is because by day the mind is occupied with surfaces. By night it descends into depths. And all truths that change life are born in the depths, not on the surface. The silence of midnight is not empty. It is full of potential, full of unformed possibility, full of waiting substance. Just as the womb appears dark and still from the outside, while life secretly forms within, so the night appears to be only rest, while in truth it is creation in its most delicate stage. The embryo of tomorrow's world is forming, while you lie motionless in your bed. And the nature of that embryo is determined by the mood you carry across the threshold of sleep. This is why I say to you that the last thought of the night is the first stone laid in the foundation of the day. You may not see it then. You may not recognize it when you wake. But as the hours unfold, the form you planted begins to take shape. A word spoken to you, a meeting that seems accidental, a sudden impulse to go here instead of there. These are not random. They are the child of the silent union between imagination and subconscious that took place while you slept. The world is loud by day. It shouts at you of delays, obstacles, and limitations. It tells you what you cannot be, what you cannot have, what you must endure. But the night speaks another language. It speaks without words. It offers you a blank page, upon which you may write the next chapter of your life without interference. It does not ask you for proof, for credentials, or for permission. It asks only one thing: what will you assume to be true as you enter? And here is where men so often fall back into their old chains. They bring the worries of the day into the stillness of the night. They review their failures as though the darkness were a courtroom and the past were on trial once more. They fall asleep in the feeling of lack, of anger, of humiliation, of fear. And then they are astonished when the same story greets them again at dawn. They do not see that they have used the most powerful creative hour only to repeat what already was. I tell you again, with all the earnestness born of living this law, the night does not judge. It magnifies. Whatever you carry into it, it will return to you multiplied. If you carry resentment, it seeds future conflict. If you carry despair, it deepens into heavier burdens. If you carry hope felt as real, it blossoms as opportunity. If you carry peace as a lived reality, it appears as harmony without effort. The night is the reaper of every seed you have sown through the day. In this sacred interval between worlds, the imagination is king. It sits on the throne from which all visible kingdoms are ruled. Reason, with all her arguments and doubts, lies down like a weary servant. She will rise again at dawn and question everything you did in the night. But by then, the decree will already be issued. The form will already be taking shape. That is why those who understand this law do not argue with reason at midnight. They use the moment before she awakens. They speak to the deeper mind, while it alone holds the scepter. I do not yet place the full code into your hands. Not yet. But I wish you now to feel, not merely to understand, the holiness of this hour. I wish you to sense that when you cross the threshold into sleep, you are not merely ending a day. You are entering the workshop of creation. You are stepping into the chamber where tomorrow is conceived. And if you know this, truly know it, you will never again enter that chamber carelessly, carrying with you the dust and noise of yesterday. Let the day die cleanly. Let the old self loosen its grip without resistance. As the body grows heavy and the mind begins to drift, you will find yourself once more at the gate between worlds. And when you stand there, in that gentle fading of wakefulness, remember that you are standing where causes are chosen, not where effects are seen. What you accept there as true will not remain a dream. It will take upon itself flesh and walk your world in the light of day. And so the stage is now set. You know what words are. You know what the night is. You know why midnight is not an hour, but a passage. In the movements that follow, I shall begin to draw the veil aside from the code itself, not as a doctrine to be memorized, but as a living practice to be entered. For the soil is prepared, the silence is ready, and soon you shall be given the seed. Now we come to the heart of the mystery, the thing that has been hidden in plain sight through the ages, whispered in Scripture yet misunderstood by the multitudes. I speak now of the name that is above every name, the name that is not a title, not a distant throne word, not a sound reserved for temples and hymns, but the very awareness of being itself. When Moses stood trembling before the burning bush and asked, "Whom shall I say has sent me?" the answer did not come as a title. It did not come as a description. It came as pure being. I am that I am. Tell them I am has sent you. This was not poetry. This was revelation. The name of God is not a word you pronounce with the lips alone. It is the sense you carry of yourself every moment of your life. I tell you from my own experience, and from all that I have observed in the lives of men and women who tested this law, there is no creative power outside of the I am that you feel yourself to be. You are not praying to something distant. You are not trying to move a God who is far away. You are invoking the only source that ever creates, your own awareness of being. When you say I am, you are touching the very root of reality. And what you place after those sacred words is the mold into which your life will pour itself. Yet for centuries, this truth was veiled. Men were taught to beg where they were meant to decree. They were taught to plead where they were meant to assume. They were taught to kneel before an external deity rather than to awaken to the God within. And so prayer became entreaty instead of creation. Hope replaced certainty. Waiting replaced knowing. And the power that could have liberated them was set outside their own reach. The commandment, "Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain," has been misunderstood almost entirely. Men think it refers to profanity, to careless speech. But I tell you, the true meaning is far deeper and far more personal. To take the name of God in vain is to join the sacred I am to a false state. It is to say, I am poor, I am sick, I am unworthy, I am alone, and to stamp the seal of divinity upon limitation. For when you say I am, you speak as God. And when you add a condition of bondage to that name, you decree bondage as law in your world. Do you see now why so many believe themselves to be trapped? They have bound themselves with their own prayers. They have taken the name of God in vain, not by blasphemy of the tongue, but by unconscious declarations of defeat. And the subconscious, which is the faithful servant of that name, does not argue. It does not question. It simply obeys. If you say, I am powerless, it clothes itself in powerless. If you say, I am fearful, it fashions circumstances that mirror fear. If you say, I am abandoned, it brings you the experience of abandonment, not because God punishes, but because God fulfills. But the same law that binds also sets free. The moment you dare to join the name I am, to freedom, to abundance, to love, to health, the decree is reversed. You have not changed God. You have changed your concept of God. And in doing so, you have changed the pattern that the subconscious will externalize as your world. Most religions taught men to address God as thou, as something separate. They taught distance, hierarchy, unworthiness. They taught man to approach on his knees. But the great revelation is not thou art God. The great revelation is I am. It is not God outside who saves. It is God awakened within. When you say I am, you do not speak to God. You speak as God. And what you assume to be true of yourself at that level must become true in the world of form. I have seen this truth work in lives broken by poverty. A man once came to me in utter despair. He had tried everything the world suggested: labor, pleading, strategy, endurance, and yet lack followed him as a shadow. I did not tell him to ask God for money. I told him to change the only thing that ever needed changing, his I am. Each night, as he drifted into sleep, he whispered, not as a hope, but as a fact: I am prosperous, I am secure, I am supplied. At first, the words felt strange upon his tongue, like a garment he had never worn. But he persisted. And as he persisted, the feeling began to shift. Weeks later, opportunity arose where none had been visible. Doors opened without force. Streams of supply came from directions he could never have planned. And he said to me, it was as though the world changed its mind. No, the world did not change its mind. He changed his name. I have seen this same law raise men from beds of sickness, when every medical opinion had given up. A woman who had been told that her condition was permanent came to me with eyes filled with fear. I did not argue with the diagnosis. I did not reason with symptoms. I spoke only of identity. I told her, you do not become well by asking for help. You become well by assuming that you are health. Each night she entered the stillness and whispered, I am whole, I am strong, I am restored. She did not fight the body, she simply changed the self she was conscious of being, and the body, which is but the shadow of that consciousness, rearranged itself accordingly. The so-called miracle was nothing other than the faithful obedience of matter to the new assumption. I have seen this same name heal relationships that reason declared dead. A man and woman estranged, hardened against one another by years of resentment, both declaring their own versions of the past. One of them changed nothing outwardly. There were no letters, no arguments, no attempts at persuasion. She changed only her I am. She no longer said, I am rejected. She began to say, I am cherished, I am chosen, I am loved. She did not ask for reconciliation, she assumed it as fact in the inner world, and the outer world followed with a precision that stunned all who witnessed it. The man returned not as a different person to be negotiated with, but as the exact echo of the new state she had assumed. Do you see now how completely this alters your view of prayer? Prayer is not pleading. Prayer is not effort. Prayer is identity. Prayer is not what you ask for. Prayer is what you accept yourself to be. And that is why so few prayers appear to be answered. Men go to God as beggars and remain beggars when they rise from their knees. They leave the throne, having changed nothing in their own awareness of being. And so the world remains the same. But the one who rises from prayer saying, I am now that which I desired to be, carries the answer within himself. The answer does not need to come to him. It unfolds from him. The prayer is not fulfilled. The prayer becomes flesh. This is why the prophets did not beg. They declared. This is why Jesus did not ask. He assumed, Lazarus, come forth. Stretch forth your hand. Rise, take up your bed, and walk. These were not requests made to heaven. These were assumptions issued from identity. He knew who he was, and because he knew who he was, the world obeyed his word. Now understand this correctly. It is not enough to repeat the words I am mechanically. The power does not lie in the syllables. The power lies in the feeling of being that follows them. If you say, I am wealthy, while feeling poor, the subconscious receives poverty, not wealth. It receives the feeling, not the phrase. If you say, I am free, while inwardly imprisoned by fear, it is fear that is planted. You must not only speak the new name, you must wear it inwardly as your natural state. This is why I have told you that the midnight hour, the twilight of consciousness, is the appointed time for this decree. For in that hour, the conscious resistance fades, and the feeling becomes far easier to sustain. You no longer argue with the state. You simply enter it. You no longer try to convince the mind. You sink into the truth of it as into a warm bath. And as you drift into sleep in that feeling of being, the subconscious receives it as law. From that moment forward, the bridge of incidence begins to form. You do not see it being built. You do not know how it will appear. But step by step, day by day, the world reshapes itself to meet the image you accepted of yourself in the night. Every conversation, every chance encounter, every delay, every acceleration, all are components of that unseen bridge. There is nothing mystical about this in the sense of superstition. It is mystical only in the sense that it operates from a dimension unseen by the senses. The law is simple, but its simplicity is its disguise. Men search for complexity because they distrust simplicity. They look for rituals, formulas, techniques, while ignoring the one thing that never fails: identity. You do not get what you want. You get what you are conscious of being. Desiring wealth does not make you rich. Being wealth in consciousness makes you rich. Wishing for love does not make you loved. Being love in consciousness makes you loved. Asking for health does not heal. Being health in consciousness reorganizes the body in health's image. This is why I call this name the Forbidden Code. Not because it is truly forbidden, but because few dare to use it correctly. They feel too small, too unworthy, too conditioned by centuries of teaching that told them to kneel rather than to stand. Yet the very heart of Scripture is a call to stand. Awake, thou that sleepest, and arise. Arise from what? From the belief that you are separate from the power that creates. Now your idea of God must change forever if you truly grasp this. God is not a being who grants favors. God is being itself. God is the I am that you feel at the center of your own awareness. And when you join that awareness to a new state, you are not asking, you are becoming. And with this becoming comes a profound responsibility. Every idle I am is a prayer. Every careless identification is a decree. You cannot speak of yourself without shaping your world. Even when you believe you are doing nothing, you are creating. For consciousness never rests. It always assumes, and what it assumes, it expresses. This is why I say to you with all gentleness and all urgency, guard your I am. Do not fasten it to exhaustion, to age, to fear, to lack, to loneliness. For whatever you fasten it to, you become. Instead, dare to join it to the truth of your highest desire. Not as fantasy, not as escape, but as the new foundation of your being. You may tell me that your past proves otherwise. I tell you your past is only the record of former names you bore. Change the name and the future rewrites itself. The past has no creative power of its own. It has power only when you continue to name yourself by it. Now the revelation is complete. You have seen what the code is. You have seen why it was misunderstood. You have seen how it has shaped your world unconsciously, and you have seen that it can now shape it consciously. But knowledge alone will not alter a single circumstance. You must use it, and the proper use of this name comes not in the noise of the day, but in the silence of the night, when the soul stands naked before its own creative depth. In the next movement, I shall show you exactly how to enter that silence, how to speak this name in the state where it cannot fail, how to join it to feeling, how to release it into the subconscious, and how to awaken into a world that must reflect the new identity you have dared to claim. Even after a man has heard the truth, even after he has glimpsed the power of the I am, there are still forces within him that rise up to resist his freedom. These forces are not sent by fate, nor imposed by circumstance. They are habits of belief, deeply conditioned ways of seeing that have grown strong through long use. And unless they are exposed and understood, they will quietly sabotage the work of the law. I have seen this again and again. A man hears the teaching, feels its truth, begins to assume a new state, and then, without knowing why, he falters. He says, why does it not hold? Why does it seem to work for a moment and then slip away? The reason is always the same. He has not uprooted the three great enemies of the miracle. The first is the false authority he has given to the outer world. From childhood, you were taught to trust your senses as the final judge of truth. You were told that what you see, touch, weigh, and measure is reality, and that anything unseen is imagination, fancy, or wishful thinking. And so the world of shadows was crowned king, while the world of cause was treated as a dream. This is the great inversion. The outer world is not the cause of your life. It is the effect. It is not the soil. It is the harvest. Yet men bow before it as though it were the creator. So when a man begins to assume a new state, the outer world immediately cries out, "You are lying. Look at the facts." He declares, "I am free," and the world answers, "But the chains are still here." He says, "I am supplied," and the world spreads the bills before his eyes. And if he submits to that testimony, if he allows appearances to overrule his assumption, he surrenders his power at the very moment it is most needed. He returns again to the old identity, and the miracle collapses, not because the law has failed, but because he has withdrawn his consent. Men do not understand that the outer world has never been alive in the way they think it is. It has no power to initiate. It can only respond. It is like an echo that seems loud and convincing, yet cannot speak a single word unless the voice has spoken first. To believe that the echo causes the sound is to live in illusion. To believe that circumstances cause consciousness is to live as a slave to shadows. I tell you this plainly because it must be broken in you if you are to be free. The world you see is always behind you. It is never ahead of you. It is always the footprint of where your consciousness has already been. And if you turn back to read that footprint as prophecy, you bind yourself to repeat it. The man who judges by appearances robs himself of the future before it is born. The second great enemy is guilt. This one is more subtle and more damaging than the first. It does not speak in the language of facts, but in the language of worthiness. It whispers, "You may not have this. You have sinned, you have failed, you have been wrong. Who are you to claim abundance? Who are you to claim love? Who are you to claim health?" And many a good man and woman, who could easily accept the law intellectually, are bound at this hidden gate. They believe the power may be real, but not for them. Much of this guilt was planted in early teaching, where sorrow was called holy, and desire was called selfish. Men were taught that suffering purified them, that lack made them virtuous, that to want more than survival was pride. And so when the law offers them fullness, they feel a subtle recoil inside. They feel as though they are doing something wrong by choosing joy. They feel as though they must pay first, suffer first, atone first. This is not humility. This is misunderstanding. True humility is not thinking yourself unworthy of good. True humility is recognizing that the good does not come from the small self at all. It comes from the I am, which is God. To deny yourself abundance on the grounds of guilt is not modesty. It is a denial of the nature of God as life itself, ever expanding. The scripture does not say, "I have come that you may merely survive." It says, "I have come that you may have life and have it more abundantly." Abundance is not a reward for the righteous. It is the natural expression of life when it is unresisted. Guilt is resistance. It is the belief that God withholds, and God never withholds. Man withholds from himself. I have watched men sabotage their own success at the very moment it appeared because they secretly believed they did not deserve it. They would make a careless decision, speak a word of doubt, turn from the opportunity, as though guided by an unseen hand that always returned them to the level they felt was appropriate. That hand was not fate. It was their own unhealed sense of unworthiness. And so repentance must be understood in its true light. Repentance does not mean punishment. It does not mean sorrow for what has happened. It does not mean self-accusation. The word simply means a change of mind. It is the turning away from the old identity into the new. It is the abandonment of the self-concept that kept you small. When you repent in this sense, you are not paying for the past. You are releasing it. Repentance is saying, "I am no longer the man who failed. I am no longer the woman who was rejected. I am no longer the child who was afraid." It is the conscious decision to withdraw your life from an old story and place it into a new one. And the moment that shift is made, guilt has no ground to stand on. For guilt belongs only to the old state. When the state is abandoned, guilt dissolves as mist before the sun. The third great enemy is the programming of the past. This is the deep pattern formed by years of repetition. These are the beliefs that no longer sound like voices in your mind, because they have become the furniture of your being. You do not hear them. You live from them. They were planted by parents, by teachers, by the culture of your world, by repeated experiences of disappointment and loss, and you mistook these patterns for yourself. A man may intellectually accept that he is divine in essence, yet still feels small in the marrow of his bones, A woman may know that abundance is lawful, yet feel tension the moment money is mentioned. These reactions do not arise from the conscious mind. They rise from a deeper, older layer, where identity has been impressed through years of feeling. The subconscious has no sense of time. What was impressed upon it at 5 years old remains as alive and active as what was impressed yesterday. This is why a single childhood wound can echo through an entire lifetime. If it is never revised, the subconscious does not heal itself through forgetting. It heals through re-impression. A new image must take the place of the old. This is why the law does not work through mere words alone. Words without feeling skim the surface. They do not reach the depth where the old patterns live. You may affirm by day and still react automatically by night. The affirmation has not yet become sensation. It has not yet become identity. But here is the good news. No programming is permanent. No trauma is final. No past is stronger than imagination. For imagination created the original pattern, and imagination alone can create a new one. The subconscious is not hostile. It is obedient. It does not cling to the old out of stubbornness. It clings to it because nothing new has yet been planted deeply enough to replace it. I have seen men who lived for decades under the shadow of a single limiting belief. I always fail. I am unlucky. People always leave me. And who, in a short time, saw their entire outward life transformed simply by revising the inner image that supported that belief. They did not fight the past. They rewrote it. They returned in imagination to decisive moments and saw them differently. They heard themselves spoken to with kindness instead of contempt. They saw doors open instead of close. And as the revised scenes became inwardly real, the future reshaped itself to match. This is the true meaning of being born again. It is not a ritual. It is not a creed. It is a change of identity. It is the moment when a man ceases to carry his past as a destiny and assumes a new name in consciousness. And the name he assumes is always I am. So when the miracle seems to fail, do not accuse the law. Look instead to these three places. Where have I given power to appearances? Where do I still harbor guilt? And where am I unconsciously loyal to an old identity? These are not enemies to be fought in anger. They are illusions to be dissolved in understanding. The outer world will lose its false authority the moment you truly accept it as an effect and not a cause. Guilt will fall away the moment you realize that God does not judge you for desiring fullness. And old programming will loosen its grip the moment you dare to feel yourself to be someone new. And when these three enemies lose their hold, the law no longer stumbles in you. It flows, it moves without obstruction. The I am you speak at midnight no longer collides with contradiction. It descends into a soil that is ready, clean, and receptive. And then the seed does what it has always been appointed to do. It grows. Very few reach this freedom, not because it is difficult, but because it demands honesty with oneself at a depth most have never visited. Yet, if you have come with me this far, you are already nearer than you think. For the very awareness of these enemies begins their undoing. In the next movement, I will lead you into the final adversary to be mastered and the great shield that overcomes it, the nature of doubt and the power of persistence that quietly conquers every resistance the mind can raise. After a man has loosened the grip of appearances, after he has seen through guilt, after he has begun to unwind the old programming of the past, there still remains one more adversary, subtler than all the rest, quieter than fear, softer than resistance, yet more destructive than circumstances and more persistent than memory. This enemy does not shout, it whispers. It does not strike in open daylight. It waits for the stillness of night. Its name is doubt. Doubt is not a thunderbolt. It is a tremor. It is not a storm. It is a faint inner hesitation. It slithers into the mind after the declaration is made, after the seed is planted, after the heart has dared to assume something beautiful might be true. It does not come boldly and say, "This is impossible." It comes softly and says, "Perhaps it will not work for you." And if a man listens to that whisper, the seed is wounded at the root. I have seen this again and again. A man stands in the silence and declares with real emotion, "I am free." For a moment he feels the chains loosen. For a moment there is light. Then, as he turns back to the world, A small voice murmurs, "But what if you are deceiving yourself?" And in that moment, if he yields, the old weight returns. Not because freedom was false, but because he withdrew his allegiance from it. Doubt is like a serpent, not because it is violent, but because it moves unseen. It coils in the shadows of the mind. It waits until enthusiasm fades, until the first glow of belief settles into calm. Then it lifts its head and asks its small, deadly questions. What if this is imagination only? What if this works for others, but not for you? What if you fail again? And if you answer these questions with attention, the serpent grows strong. Understand this clearly. Doubt has no power of its own. It borrows power from your consent. It is like a thief that cannot enter a house unless the door is left unlatched. The seed that is planted in faith is alive, but the seed that is planted and then questioned is like a plant pulled halfway from the soil. It cannot take root while it is being examined. Many believe that doubt must be fought with force. They strain against it. They wrestle with it. They speak angrily to it. And in doing so, they give it exactly what it wants: attention. The more you fight doubt as an opponent, the more real you make it. The law does not require you to conquer doubt as though it were a monster. It requires only that you refuse to crown it as judge. The man who doubts says inwardly, "Let me see if this works." The man who believes says inwardly, "It is working already." The difference between these two is not willpower. It is loyalty. The loyal man remains faithful to his assumption even when the senses offer him no confirmation. The doubtful man demands proof before he will rest. And because he demands proof, he never rests long enough for the proof to appear. I once knew a woman who had been applying the law with sincerity. She had changed her "I am." She had entered the silence nightly. She had imagined from the end. For a time her life began to shift. Then one morning she awoke and said aloud, "Perhaps I have only been deceiving myself." It was a careless remark. Yet from that moment on, things began to unravel. Opportunities stalled. Momentum faded. She returned to me in distress and said, "It worked, and now it does not." I asked her one question, and she wept when she answered it. The question was simply this: when did you change your mind? Doubt is not always loud. Sometimes it disguises itself as reason. It says, "Be cautious. Do not be foolish. Be realistic." It dresses itself in the garments of wisdom. Yet its function is always the same: to bring your attention back from the unseen to the seen, from the assumed to the apparent, from the cause to the effect. And the moment you allow it to shift your attention back to appearances as the final judge, you have abandoned the creative position. The truth is this: doubt is not removed by more affirmations. It is dissolved by persistence in the state. You do not argue with darkness. You do not debate with shadows. You turn on the light and they vanish. The light is your continued loyalty to the feeling of the wish fulfilled. The moment you return to that state and rest in it without contest, doubt has nowhere to stand. When doubt arises, do not say, "I must fix this." Do not say, "I have ruined everything." Do not say, "I am failing." Simply return. Return to the state. Return to the feeling. Return to the inner posture that says, "It is done," and stay there. Doubt cannot live in the same room as calm certainty. It can only linger in the corridor of indecision. The scripture speaks of a double-minded man being unstable in all his ways. This does not refer to a man who has many thoughts. It refers to a man who says yes with one half of himself and no with the other. He plants and uproots. He declares and immediately retracts. He builds today and dismantles tomorrow. And because creation requires continuity of state, his world never settles. The single-minded man is not the man who never feels fear. It is the man who does not enthrone fear. Doubt may pass through him as a sensation, but it does not gain command. It knocks, but it is not invited to sit. He notices it, but he does not follow it. He returns again and again to his inner knowing, not with desperation, but with quiet authority. There is a great misunderstanding here that must be corrected. Faith is not the absence of doubt. Faith is the refusal to be governed by doubt. Faith is not emotional excitement. It is quiet fidelity. It is the steady return to the same inner conviction, until that conviction becomes the natural atmosphere of the soul. I have often told students, when you feel yourself wavering, do not inspect the field. Do not search your circumstances for signs. Return instead to your declaration as a bird returns to its nest. Let the feeling of I am be your home. Rest there, and every time you wander, return again without reproach. The farmer does not panic because the seed is not visible the morning after he has sown it. He does not accuse the soil of betrayal. He does not assume failure because the surface is the same. He understands seasons. He understands gestation. And because he understands, he waits in peace. Doubt is simply the refusal to wait in peace. It is the demand that tomorrow arrive today. You must grasp this deeply. Impatience is doubt wearing the mask of urgency. Anxiety is doubt disguised as concern. Constant checking is doubt pretending to be vigilance. The only true sign of faith is rest. Rest is the seal upon the imaginal act. Rest is the evidence that the seed has been committed to the soil. When you have spoken the name and felt the state, and then released it into midnight, the work on your part is complete. From that moment forward, any return to uncertainty is not action, it is interference. And interference always delays the harvest. Yet even here, I tell you, be gentle with yourself. You were not conditioned in one day, and you will not be unconditioned in one day either. When doubt appears, do not condemn yourself. Simply see it as the last echo of an old identity. It has no authority unless you assign it one. Smile inwardly at it and return to your state. The moment you stop fearing doubt, it loses its poison. The moment you stop battling it, it loses its strength. The moment you stop listening to it, it falls silent. It thrives on importance. Starve it of importance, and it dissolves. The serpent in the old story tempted with a question, did God really say? That question has never changed. Doubt always begins with questioning your own authority as I am. And the answer that ends the question is always the same. Quiet assumption, not argument, not defense, not explanation, just being. So when doubt attempts to steal your seed, do not chase it into the night. Stand in the garden and guard your state. Say within yourself, I remain what I have declared myself to be, and remain. In the next movement, I shall show you the great shield that makes doubt powerless, the law of persistence, and why an assumption, though false if persisted in, cannot help but become fact. This is the key that binds everything together and makes the miracle inevitable. When a man has learned to see through doubt, he stands at the threshold of a great and gentle power, the power of persistence. Yet persistence, as the world understands it, is struggle. It is grit of the teeth, tightening of the will, straining toward a distant goal. But the persistence of which I speak is of an entirely different nature. It is not effort. It is not tension. It is loyalty. It is the quiet, steady fidelity to a state once it has been assumed. It is remaining true to what you have dared to feel as real, even when the world has not yet clothed it with form. Persistence is not forcing the river. It is remaining upon the bank in the knowledge that the river is already flowing where it must. The man who persists does not wake each morning asking, has it arrived? He wakes each morning knowing that it is on its way because it is already alive within him. He does not count the days, he lives from the end. And because he lives from it, he no longer experiences himself as waiting. So many fail here, not because they lack faith, but because they measure time. They say, it has been a week, it has been a month, it has been a year. And with each measurement, they quietly affirm delay. They speak of time as though it were an enemy standing between them and fulfillment. But time is not an obstacle. Time is merely the interval through which a state moves as it becomes natural to the one who assumes it and visible to the world that reflects it. An assumption becomes fact not because one forces it, but because one grows so accustomed to it that it no longer feels strange. At first, the new state feels like a visitor. Then it feels like a guest who returns again and again. And at last, it feels like the home. When it has become home inwardly, it cannot remain homeless outwardly. The world must then rearrange itself to match what has already settled within. This is the bridge I have spoken of so often, the bridge of incidence. It is not built by the reasoning mind. It is not drawn by plans. It is woven silently by the subconscious, as it moves the pieces of reality into alignment with the image you have accepted of yourself. You do not see the bridge being built. You only walk one step at a time. And often you do not even recognize that you are upon the bridge until you find yourself standing in the very place you once only imagined. I recall a man who desired wealth, not in the vague sense of comfort, but in the concrete sense of freedom from all debt and anxiety. He did not begin with schemes. He did not calculate endlessly. He assumed a single simple thing: I am secure. Money comes to me freely and easily. He lived from that assumption quietly. Months passed with little outward change. Then, without strain, opportunities presented themselves. The transaction here, an introduction there, a chain of events so natural that afterwards it seemed inevitable. Yet it was built invisibly, plank by plank, by his persistence in seeing himself as already secure. Another woman longed to travel to a land she had never seen and had no means to reach. She did not concern herself with the cost. She did not debate with the seeming impossibility. She fell asleep night after night, feeling the motion of the ship, the strange air upon her face, the joy of being elsewhere. For a long time, nothing changed. Then one day a letter arrived, an invitation followed, and the passage was paid without her having sought it. She washed upon the shores she had walked so often in imagination. The bridge had been built in silence. I have known men who assumed homes they could not yet afford, and years later found themselves walking through those same rooms in physical form. I have known those who assumed health while the body lagged behind for months, and then one day discovered that the pain had quietly vanished without dramatic moment. These are not stories of haste. They are stories of inevitability. The outer always lags behind the inner, just as the shadow lags behind the body. But the shadow cannot choose a different direction once the body has turned. The mistake most make is that they attempt to persist with the will instead of with identity. They say, I must hold this thought, and in doing so, they confess that the state is still unnatural to them. But true persistence is not holding. It is remaining. It is living from the new identity, so gently that you forget it was ever new. When you find that you no longer argue with the assumption, no longer defend it, no longer explain it, you will know that persistence has done its work. It has become you. And when it becomes you, the world has no choice but to mirror it. Let go of the idea that the miracle must announce itself with thunder. Most of the most important transformations occur so quietly that you only recognize them in retrospect. One day, you realize that you are no longer afraid as you once were. One day you notice that money comes without the old tension. One day you see that your body moves with ease where it once resisted, and you may not even remember the exact moment the shift occurred. That is persistence at work. You must also abandon the notion that persistence means repeating the words endlessly. Repetition alone does not create. Identification creates. The words are only a doorway. The state is the house. Once you are inside the house, you do not stand on the doorstep knocking. If in the beginning, you must return to the declaration nightly to reacquaint yourself with the state, then do so gently. That is not failure. That is the process of making the unfamiliar familiar. But do not believe that you are trying to make it happen. You are not making the harvest by effort. You are simply remaining faithful to the seed you have already planted. There is no appointed length of time for any assumption to harden into fact. Some move swiftly. Some move through slow rearrangements that feel invisible until the final moment. But all move by the same law. The only way to delay a harvest is to uproot or contradict the seed. To persist is simply to leave it undisturbed in the soil of your being. And here is a truth that brings great peace. The faster you stop needing it to happen, the faster it begins to happen. Need is anxiety. Anxiety is doubt, and doubt reopens the door you have already closed. The moment you say inwardly, it is fine whether this appears tomorrow or in its proper hour, you have returned to rest. And rest is the atmosphere in which the bridge builds most swiftly. I tell you plainly, the miracle is not tired. The law is not weary. The only thing that ever grows exhausted is the man who wrestles instead of rests. Lay your burden down. Your work was finished the moment you assumed the state with feeling. From that moment on, persistence is not doing, it is being. You will know that persistence has taken hold when the idea of your desire no longer excites you with longing, but comforts you with familiarity. When it no longer feels like a dream you are chasing, but like a memory you are living out again. That is the sign that the subconscious has accepted the new image as its own. And once the subconscious accepts, the outer world is already defeated. It must yield, not by violence, not by argument, but by quiet reorganization. The invisible becomes visible because it has already become undeniable within you. In the next movement, I shall lead you into the most practical and delicate operation of all. How to enter the state akin to sleep and deliberately impress the subconscious with the realized feeling of the wish fulfilled, so that persistence becomes effortless and the bridge builds without strain. Now you must pass from the final subtle distinction that separates those who merely hope from those who inevitably receive. It is the difference between thinking about a thing and thinking from it. Most men live their entire lives thinking about what they desire. They hold it before their minds as something distant, something future, something conditional. They say, one day I will be, one day I will have, one day it will change. And in that very language, they bind it to tomorrow. They keep it always just beyond their reach, forever imagined and never embodied. They remain spectators at the edge of their own lives, watching the play of desire from the audience rather than stepping onto the stage as the actor. To live in the end is to make a complete inward shift. It is to stop standing outside your desire and to enter it. It is to stop looking at it as a picture on the wall and to begin living inside it as the room you now inhabit. You do not think of being successful. You think from success. You do not think of being loved. You think from love. You do not think of having money. You think from the state of already being the one who receives, spends, gives, and lives with ease. This is where so many stumble, because the intellect rebels. It says, but I do not yet see it. And that is precisely the point. If you were to see it, you would not need to live from it. The whole movement of creation begins in the unseen. To live from the end is to grant your imagination the authority that the senses have falsely assumed. You cease asking, will it happen? And instead ask, how does it feel now that it has? There is a vast difference between desiring money and being the one who receives money naturally. The first is anxious. The second is calm. The first watches every coin. The second carries quiet expectation. The first is tense. The second is at ease, and the outer world always mirrors the inner tone, never the outer wish. If you chase money, you confess to being the one who lacks it. If you become inwardly the one who receives it as a matter of course, the chase ends and the flow begins. I have said often that imagination is the real man, and the physical man is only his shadow. If that is true, then living in the end is simply allowing the real man to take his rightful place, and permitting the shadow to follow as it must. The shadow never leads, it only reflects. To demand that the shadow move first is to reverse the nature of things. Consider the actor upon the stage. Before he ever appears before the audience, he has already become the character inwardly. He has accepted the identity. He has learned the manner, the tone, the gestures. When he steps onto the stage, he is not hoping to be the character. He is being the character. The audience then responds as though the character were real, because to the actor it already is. That is living in the end. You must become the actor of your desire, not the admirer of it. The spectator sits in the crowd and says, how wonderful it would be to be up there. The actor stands in the light and lives the role. The spectator talks of possibilities. The actor embodies inevitability. The law of assumption responds to the actor every time. This is why I tell you that identity must come first, and facts second. The world does not rearrange itself to satisfy your wishes. It rearranges itself to confirm your identity. When you change your sense of who you are, facts change of necessity. When you retain the old identity, facts remain loyal to it, no matter how fervently you wish otherwise. A man once said to me, Neville, I want to be wealthy. I asked him quietly, are you inwardly the man who receives money? or the man who hopes for money. He fell silent. He had been imagining checks, counting ledgers, visualizing gold, but inwardly he was still the one who worried, the one who strained, the one who doubted every increase. He was thinking about wealth without being wealth. When at last he changed places inwardly, when he began to feel that money belonged in his life as naturally as air belonged in his lungs, the outer movement began. Living in the end is not pretending. It is not acting with forced enthusiasm. It is not walking about declaring loudly what you do not feel. It is a quiet inward attitude. It is the settled knowing that this is my state now. It is the absence of negotiation with the world. It is not waiting. It is occupying. When you live from the end, you no longer ask, how will this happen? That question belongs to the old man who stood outside the door. The new man is already inside the house. He does not wonder how the door will open. It is already behind him. The entire burden of logistics falls from his shoulders, because logistics belong to the bridge, not to the state. There is a strange peace that comes the moment you truly enter the end inwardly. The restlessness of desire falls away. The searching stops. The bargaining ceases. You still may enjoy imagining details, but it is no longer from need. It is from familiarity. You find yourself returning to the feeling not to get it, but because it feels like home. This is why living in the end often brings results swifter than frantic effort. Effort confesses lack. Being confesses possession. Effort says, I do not yet have. Being says, this is my place. And life cannot resist a state that is occupied, but it ignores a state that is merely visited. You have known moments of this in your own life without knowing their cause. There were times when you simply knew something would happen, not because you forced belief, but because you had already accepted it as fact inwardly. And when you accepted it, time seemed only to catch up with your knowing. That is living in the end. To desire is natural, but to remain desiring is to remain outside. The door opens when desire gives way to identity. The hunger dissolves when the meal is inwardly eaten. The person who lives in the end no longer identifies as the one who wants. He identifies as the one who is. This is particularly powerful in the matter of money. Money does not move toward desperation. It moves toward identity. It flows in the direction of the one who expects it without tension. The one who constantly seeks it broadcasts absence. The one who quietly receives it inwardly broadcasts presence. The world responds to broadcast, not to begging. So I say to you, stop chasing the shadow and become the body. Stop pursuing the echo and become the voice. Stop asking how the end will come and begin living as though you had already arrived. The moment you shift from I desire to I am, the entire pattern of your life begins to reorganize. And now, having learned to live from the end, to think from instead of about, to be the actor rather than the spectator, we are ready to enter the most practical and sacred operation of all, the deliberate act of carrying this state into the gate of sleep, where the subconscious receives it without resistance and fashions it into fact. In the next movement, I shall guide you step by step into the state akin to sleep and show you how to impress the subconscious directly with the feeling of the wish fulfilled, so that living in the end becomes effortless and natural. Now we come to the very substance of creation itself, the subtle element, without which no assumption ever takes root. Words are only the outer garment. Images are only the outline. But feeling is the living substance that gives them weight, depth, and reality. Without feeling, nothing is impressed. Without feeling, the subconscious remains untouched. And because the subconscious is the womb of all form, nothing can be born unless feeling has first conceived it. When I say that feeling is the secret, I do not mean violent emotion. I do not mean strain, excitement, or fevered enthusiasm. Those things belong to the surface of the mind. Feeling, in the sense of which I speak, is conviction. It is the quiet inner knowing that does not argue. It is the settled state that says, this is so, without the need for proof. It is the still authority beneath the thoughts, the tone behind the words. You may say with your lips, I am free. But if inwardly you still feel bound, it is the bondage that will be impressed. You may declare, I am wealthy, but if inwardly you feel anxious, tight, and fearful around money, It is that atmosphere of lack that the subconscious will accept as truth. The subconscious is deaf to words. It hears only feeling. It is blind to declarations. It sees only states. The mistake most make is that they try to generate feeling by forcing emotion. They work themselves into a pitch. They strain to feel happy, feel rich, feel loved. And because effort is felt, the effort itself becomes the dominant impression. They end up impressing strain instead of fulfillment. The true feeling of the wish fulfilled is never tense. It is always relaxed. It is the feeling you would have if the desire were already an accomplished fact in your life. Think of the difference between wanting rest and being rested. Wanting rest is restless. Being rested is still. One is a reaching, the other is a possession. The feeling of the wish fulfilled always has the quality of rest. It is the emotional equivalent of sitting down after a long journey. It is not the excitement of expectation. It is the ease of arrival. If you wish to know whether you are truly feeling the wish fulfilled, ask yourself one simple question. Do I feel as though I am waiting for it, or as though I am living from it? Waiting has tension in it. Living from has ease in it. When the feeling has shifted from tension to ease, the subconscious has accepted the new state. You must learn to recognize the inner textures of states. Security, for example, does not feel loud. It feels quiet. It feels like breathing without thinking about it. It feels like sleeping without fear of interruption. It feels like moving through the day without watching the ground beneath every step. That quiet steadiness is the feeling of security. And when you enter that inner texture deliberately, without asking how, you begin to impress the subconscious with the fact of security. Abundance has its own inner texture as well. It does not feel like gold coins clinking loudly. It feels like relaxation around exchange. It feels like giving without calculation. It feels like spending without contraction. It feels like knowing that more will come without having to prove it. When a man truly feels abundance, he is not obsessed with money. He is at ease with it. Love also has its hidden texture. It is not always rapture. It is belonging. It is warmth. It is the sense of being at home in the presence of another. It is safety without negotiation. To feel loved is not to imagine dramatic scenes. It is to feel that you are chosen without effort. Freedom has its own quiet signature as well. It is not rebellion. It is lightness. It is the absence of inner pressure. It is the sense that there is room to move, room to choose, room to breathe. When you feel that inner spaciousness, you are already touching freedom, regardless of appearances. These are not ideas to be understood. They are atmospheres to be entered, and the way you enter them is not by forcing the door, but by letting the body grow still and allowing the imagination to carry you into the tone of the fulfilled state. Imagine yourself alone in the quiet of the evening. The day is finished. The noises of the world have faded. You sit without urgency. Your breathing slows. In that stillness, allow yourself to ask not, "What do I want?" but "Who am I when this is already so?" Do not answer with words. Wait for the feeling to rise. It may come as warmth. It may come as relief. It may come as calm. It may come as a gentle smile inside the chest. However it comes, do not analyze it. Abide in it. If the feeling flickers and fades, do not be discouraged. You are not failing. You are learning how to remain. Return again, gently, as one returns to a familiar room after stepping out momentarily. With each return, the feeling deepens. With each return, it becomes easier to find. There is a reason I tell you to approach this in the state akin to sleep. In that twilight, the feeling is far more accessible. The mind is no longer arguing. The nerves are no longer tense. The body is softened. And in that softness, feeling becomes fluid. You can slide into a new state as easily as you slide into a warm bath. When you lie down at night, and the boundary between waking and sleep begins to blur, do not rush past that tender moment. Linger there. Hover in it. And in that hovering, ask yourself softly, what would I feel if this were already done? Then allow the answer to come as sensation rather than as thought. You are not trying to convince yourself. You are letting yourself remember, for the state you desire already exists. All states exist. Creation is finished. You are simply selecting which of these finished states you shall animate with awareness. One may sit in poverty and think of wealth endlessly without ever entering the feeling of being wealthy. Another may sit in the same poverty and yet inwardly feel the quiet assurance of one who is supplied, and that one will walk out of poverty while the first remains bound. The difference is not imagination, both imagined. The difference is feeling, only one felt. I have often said that the conscious mind is the male, and the subconscious is the female. In the great mystery of creation, the thought is the sperm, the feeling is the womb. Without the womb, nothing can be conceived. You may emit thought endlessly, but without feeling, there is no gestation. When the feeling is present, conception has already occurred. From that moment, the manifestation is only a matter of time. And time, as I have said, is not to be measured by impatience. It is simply the interval through which the invisible becomes visible. Do not strive to feel all the time. That itself becomes strain. Enter the feeling lovingly in the sacred moments, especially as you approach sleep. Let it seed the night, then rise in the morning without clutching at it. The feeling will return naturally, because it has been accepted by the deeper mind. Over time, you will notice something subtle and beautiful. The feeling will begin to appear without effort during the day. You will catch yourself responding as the new self spontaneously, without calculation. That is the sign that the subconscious has begun to wear the new state as its own garment. This is why I say that feeling is the secret. It is the bridge between imagination and fact. It is the invisible substance that crystallizes into circumstance. Thought sketches the outline. Feeling pours the life into it. You cannot fail once you understand this, because you will no longer be trying to get the thing. You will be allowing yourself to be the state, and once you are it, you do not seek it, you express it. And now, having learned how feeling becomes the creative substance, we are ready to move into one of the most liberating and mysterious operations of all: the art of revision, the changing of the past to free the future. Now I bring you to a mystery so gentle, so merciful, that if you truly grasp it, you will never again feel trapped by yesterday. For most men believe that the past is fixed, that what has happened is carved into stone, and must forever determine what comes next. They say, "This happened to me, therefore I am this." They wear their old wounds like names. They let former failures write the script of their tomorrow. But I tell you, this is one of the great illusions that binds humanity to suffering unnecessarily. The past is not fixed. The past is fluid. The past lives only in consciousness. And what lives in consciousness can be changed. You see, the world you experience today is the outpicturing of yesterday's assumptions. What you call memory is not a dead archive. It is a living state that continues to nourish the present. If you revisit a painful moment again and again in feeling, you are not merely remembering it, you are recreating it. You are reseeding it. And so it appears to continue through new situations, new people, new disappointments that wear different faces, but carry the same emotional signature. This is why one man seems to always be betrayed, why another always loses money, why another always falls short at the last moment. They are not cursed by fate, they are loyal to an unrevised memory. Revision is the art of mercy practiced upon oneself. It is the deliberate act of re-entering a past experience in imagination and changing it to what you wish had happened instead. And I do not mean this as fantasy for comfort. I mean it as an actual creative act that changes the causal chain of your life. When you revise the past in consciousness, you alter the feeling that flows out of it into the present. And when the feeling changes, the future must change also. Perhaps you were humiliated once. Perhaps you were rejected. Perhaps you failed publicly. Perhaps money slipped through your fingers in a way that left you ashamed and fearful. Perhaps you were abandoned. You have told yourself the story so many times that it has become part of your very identity. You say, "I am the one who was rejected. I am the one who lost everything. I am the one who was betrayed." And because you keep saying, "I am in connection with that old wound," you keep giving it life. But now I tell you, you may take that very scene and redeem it. You may enter it again in imagination, as you would enter a dream, and you may change it. You do not deny that it appeared to happen. You simply deny it the power to continue shaping your life. Let me show you the principle gently. Each night as you drift towards sleep, the walls of the conscious mind grow thin, the senses relax their grip. In that tender interval, recall the scene that still carries emotional charge for you. Do not analyze it. Do not accuse anyone. Simply observe it as though from within. And now, in imagination, change it. If harsh words were spoken, hear kind ones instead. If a door was closed, imagine it opening. If money was lost, imagine it returned. If rejection was given, imagine embrace taking its place. If you stood alone, imagine yourself surrounded by warmth and approval. Do not replay the old scene to suffer it again. Replay it only long enough to recognize it, and then overwrite it with the new version. Feel the relief of the new outcome. Feel the softening in the body. Feel the quiet sense that it is different now. That feeling is not symbolic. It is causal. The subconscious cannot distinguish between what the senses once recorded and what the imagination now vividly feels. It has no concern for chronology. It cares only for the state. When you revise, you are not changing a photograph in a dusty album. You are changing the feeling that has been feeding your present. And when the feeder is changed, the stream must change also. Many resist revision because they think it is denial. They say, but it really happened. And I answer, yes. But what really happened was only your assumption made visible. And what you change in assumption, you change in reality. The only reality that ever mattered was the state you occupied. Others resist because they believe suffering gives their story meaning. They think to release the wound is to lose identity. They do not yet know that the truest identity is not formed in pain, but in freedom. You do not become smaller by releasing the wound. You become whole. Revision is especially powerful with those memories that still carry shame. Shame is one of the most binding states in all of human experience. It whispers, you are unworthy. You deserve less. You must not expect too much. And because it is whispered in the first person, it carries the word, I am within it. And so shame becomes a hidden god ruling the future. When you revise a moment of shame and replace it with dignity, with acceptance, with honor, you loosen the grip of that hidden tyrant. Suddenly, opportunities that once seemed unreachable feel natural. Wealth that once felt too good for you begins to feel possible. Love that once seemed dangerous begins to feel safe. Not because the world changed first, but because your self-concept was cleansed at the root. Revision can also be used with money itself. If you lost money in the past and still feel the sting of it, you are likely to protect yourself from future abundance without realizing it. Fear becomes your treasurer. You hide when you should invest. You cling when you should circulate. You hesitate when you should assume. By revising the loss into a gain, by feeling the relief of having been restored, you release that hidden break. I have known students who revised debts that had haunted them for years. They did not deny that the bills once existed. They simply changed the emotional verdict attached to them. They imagined themselves opening letters stamped paid in full. They felt the calm of resolution. They fell asleep in that feeling. And one by one, through natural means they could not have predicted, the outer debts dissolved. But the greater gift of revision is not the outer change. It is the inner liberation. You become unchained from yesterday. You stop dragging old versions of yourself into new rooms. You become present. Understand this deeply. You are not revising to fix the past. You are revising to free the present. The future takes care of itself. Once the present state is cleansed, I have revised my own life more times than I can count. Moments of fear, moments of error, moments of delay. And each time I have watched as the weight lifted, as if a hidden knot had been untied inside me. Events rearranged themselves without violence, without strain. People changed. Circumstances softened. Outcomes shifted, not by force, but by alignment. Do not argue with your memory. Do not fight it. Simply outgrow it by re-feeling it differently. The past has no power to resist a new feeling. It is only a shadow, and shadow cannot stand against light. And now, as I tell you this, I know that some of you already feel the stirring of forgotten scenes within, moments you thought you had buried, but which still quietly guide your reactions. You need not fear them. They are not enemies. They are simply rooms in your house that have not yet been redecorated. Tonight, When you are alone with the silence, choose one such room. Enter it with gentleness. Change one small detail. Let the feeling shift. That is enough to begin. You do not need to revise your entire life in one night. You revise it one feeling at a time. And with every revision, the chain that bound you loosens further. The man who revises his past releases his future. The woman who revises her memories revises her destiny. This is not poetry. This is law. And when you understand this, truly understand it, you will no longer say, I am this because of what happened to me. You will say instead, what happened to me is changing because I am changing within. For consciousness is the only reality, and consciousness never stops yielding to its own assumptions. Now let me speak to you of the way in which the unseen becomes seen, of the quiet passage by which the imaginal seed carries you into its fulfillment. For many imagine that when the miracle comes, it must arrive with thunder and fire, with sudden flashes and undeniable spectacle. They think it must announce itself as something supernatural. And yet I tell you, the law works most often through what men call the ordinary. So ordinary, in fact, that they frequently miss the miracle even while they are walking upon it. Between the moment you assume the new state and the moment you stand in its full physical expression, there is always a movement of circumstances. This movement is not chaotic. It is ordered. It is intelligent. It is precise. And I have called this movement the bridge of incidents. It is the series of events that rearranges your world step by quiet step, so that you may naturally arrive at the state you have already occupied in imagination. You never build this bridge with effort. You do not design its architecture. You do not see it whole from beginning to end. It rises beneath your feet as you walk, one single plank at a time. And if you attempt to foresee it with the reasoning mind, you will only confuse yourself. For the bridge is not logical. It is lawful, but it is not logical from the standpoint of the old state. I have seen men lose positions they thought essential to their survival, only to discover later that the very dismissal carried them into far greater opportunity. At the moment of loss, they felt betrayed by life. They said, everything is collapsing, and yet beneath their emotional protest, the bridge was forming. Had they remained where they were, the fulfillment could never have come. The old structure had to dissolve, so the new one could appear. I have seen friendships fade that once seemed indispensable, only to be replaced later by connections that unlocked an entirely new chapter of life. At the time, the loneliness felt like punishment. In truth, it was preparation. The old had to loosen its grip to make space for the new. I have seen men move to cities they never wanted to enter, given work they never sought, introduced to people they never expected to meet, and later, standing in the fulfilled state, they would say with awe, had this one thing not happened, none of the rest could have followed. They could trace the invisible footsteps of the bridge only after they had crossed it. This is why I tell you, never judge a moment by its appearance. Never declare too quickly that something is a setback. Never be so certain that a door closing is defeat. You do not know yet whether that closing is merely the turning of the corridor that leads you to your true destination. When you assume the state of wealth, for example, the bridge may not bring money first. It may bring responsibility. It may bring opportunity disguised as pressure. It may bring interruption. It may bring uncomfortable growth. And if you resist these movements, if you declare them failures, you delay your own fulfillment by clinging to the old interpretation of events. The same is true in love. When one assumes reconciliation, the first movement may appear as silence, then distance, then an unexpected conversation, then a change of attitude in one person, then another, and suddenly what once seemed broken stands whole again. But had you judged the silence as final, you would have abandoned the bridge halfway across. The bridge of incidents is always perfectly suited to you. It is constructed not according to what you think you need, but according to what must shift within your world to make your assumption natural and stable. It is not designed for your comfort. It is designed for your fulfillment. This is why I urge you again and again not to interfere with the how. The moment you begin to dictate the path, you step back into the old state of control, fear, and limitation. The how belongs to the same wisdom that beats your heart without asking your permission. You have never had to instruct your lungs how to breathe, nor your blood how to move, and yet both perform their function with flawless obedience. The bridge is no different. Your only task is faithfulness to the end assumed. If you declared yourself free, remain faithful to that feeling even when circumstances seem to contradict it. If you declared yourself prosperous, remain faithful to that inner dignity even when outer figures lag behind. If you declared yourself beloved, remain faithful to that warmth even when the world is slow to reflect it. In doing so, you allow the bridge to assemble without resistance. You walk it without anxiety. You move through changes without panic. And one day, you wake and realize that you are no longer walking toward the fulfillment. You are standing in it. At that moment, many look back in astonishment and say, "It appears as though everything that happened before was leading here." And indeed, it was. Even the events that once seemed most hostile, even the delays that once seemed cruel, all were part of the unseen orchestration that followed your assumption. Do not think the bridge is always gentle. Sometimes it will feel like being rearranged from the inside. Old habits will be disturbed. Old identities will feel unstable. Old beliefs will crack. You may feel temporarily unrecognizable to yourself. This is not collapse. This is transformation. The caterpillar does not become the butterfly by improving its crawling. It dissolves completely before it flies. And during that dissolution, it does not look like progress at all. Yet, it is the only way progress can occur. So when the shifts come, bless them. When uncertainty rises, do not curse it. When change moves through your life, do not cling to what is being outgrown. Say instead, "This too is part of the bridge." Speak it calmly, feel it inwardly, and continue walking. You will notice another strange thing about the bridge of incidents. Once the fulfillment arrives, the tension you once felt disappears so quickly that it almost feels as though it had never been there. The struggle collapses in retrospect. What once occupied years of longing feels suddenly light, brief, and oddly distant. You wonder why you worried so much, not because it was unreal, but because you now see it from the state that has transcended it. This is one of the quiet graces of the law. It does not merely give you the desired thing, it also dissolves the memory of the waiting. And so I say to you now, if you are in the middle of change, do not demand immediate clarity. If your life feels as though it is shifting beneath you, do not interpret that as danger. Very often, it means the bridge is active. The gears are turning. The unseen is rearranging what the seen cannot yet explain. Remain loyal to the assumption. Remain gentle with the process. Remain still within even while life moves without. For the bridge never collapses beneath the feet of the one who does not turn back. And when at last you arrive, you will not say, "Now it has worked." You will say, "It was working all along. Now let me lead you," not with instructions as a schoolmaster might give, but as one soul walking beside another, in the quiet hour when the world grows dim and the unseen draws near. For this is not something to be rushed, nor something to be performed as a mechanical act. It is a sacred movement inward, a gentle withdrawal from the noise of the day into the still chamber where creation is born. As the hour approaches, you begin without urgency. There is no race. There is nothing to prove. You simply allow the day to loosen its grip upon you. The labors, the conversations, the worries, the unfinished thoughts, all of them are gently set aside, not with resistance, but with the understanding that for now they no longer matter. You may feel the tiredness in your limbs, the softness beginning to enter your body. Let it come. It is not weakness. It is the body's cooperation with the deeper movement that is about to unfold. You find your place of rest, whether it be a chair or the bed that receives you each night. And as you settle there, you do not strive to empty your mind. You simply stop feeding it. Thoughts may still drift through at first. Fragments of the day, half-formed questions, vague memories. You do not chase them away. You let them pass, as clouds pass across the evening sky, knowing they have no power over the depth that now begins to open within you. Your breathing slows naturally. With each gentle exhalation, it is as though the weight of the day is subtly lifted from your chest. With each breath out, you release a little more effort, a little more tension, a little more of the old story. The body grows heavier, as though it is gladly surrendering to gravity. The muscles soften, the jaw loosens, the eyes rest behind closed lids without strain. And then, without force, you begin to feel that delicate shift, the moment when you are no longer fully awake, yet not asleep. You are aware, but not alert. Present, but not tense. The world outside fades into distance, and the inner world grows near. This is the twilight where imagination reigns as sovereign. This is the holy hush, where the conscious mind grows quiet and the deeper self steps forward. In this softness, you do not yet speak, you simply feel. You sense yourself suspended between two worlds. The world you have known all day is slipping away, and another world, subtle, fluid, obedient to feeling, is opening beneath your awareness. There is no effort now, only receptivity. And when you feel that you have crossed this gentle threshold, when the mind is pliant and the body is still, you let the words arise, not aloud, not strained, but as a quiet inner truth. You do not beg, you do not plead, you do not reach outward. You simply acknowledge what is already so in the deeper order of being. And with the simplicity of breath, you declare within yourself, I am. You do not rush beyond it. You rest with it for a moment, as one might rest one's hand upon a warm stone. You feel the weight of those words. You feel their authority. You feel their stillness. And then, without effort, without argument, you let the state you desire gently clothe those words, not as something you hope will be, but as something that is now. If it is freedom you desire, you do not imagine breaking chains. You feel the quiet ease of moving without them. If it is abundance you desire, you do not picture piles of coin. You feel the deep security of knowing that your needs are met without strain. If it is love you desire, you do not chase faces or voices. You feel the warmth of being chosen, the calm certainty of belonging, and you remain with that feeling, as one remains with a gentle warmth on a cold night. You do not analyze it, you do not test it, you do not demand that it intensify. You simply allow it to be, knowing that its mere existence is enough. This feeling is the living seed. This feeling is the actual prayer. And as you rest in this inner atmosphere, something subtle occurs. The desire no longer feels distant. It no longer feels conditional. It no longer feels like a future event. It feels present, real, natural, almost ordinary. And this ordinariness is the surest sign that the seed has taken root. Now comes the most sacred act of all, release. Not abandonment, but surrender. You do not rise to check. You do not shift to doubt. You do not return to effort. You allow yourself to drift deeper into sleep with the assumption intact, as though you were carrying a quiet flame into the darkness, trusting that it will not be extinguished. Sleep comes not as unconsciousness, but as entrusted awareness. The subconscious receives the impression without argument, without resistance, without question. And just as the earth receives the seed in silence, so does the deeper mind receive your state and begin at once to build its expression. You do not need to witness this work. You are not invited into the machinery of cause. Your part is already complete. The world of form will take care of the rest. The unseen is now engaged. And when the night fully takes you, you pass as gently as a child passing into its mother's arms. The old day is finished. The old identity loosens. The new state settles deeper than thought, deeper than will. It becomes part of you. And this is how the seed is planted. Not with strain, not with shouting, not with desperate insistence, but with quiet authority, gentle feeling, and complete trust. When you awaken, perhaps nothing outward will have changed. And that is as it should be. The seed does not announce its planting. It announces only its harvest. But inwardly, something will be different. There will be a subtle steadiness, a calm expectancy, a softness beneath the surface that was not there before. And this is the sign that the work has begun. Night after night, you may return to this sacred movement, not in anxiety, not in repetition born of fear, but in familiarity, as one returns to a beloved place. And each time the state deepens, the feeling naturalizes, the old story fades further into shadow. And then, one day, without strain and without spectacle, the outer world will simply agree. When the morning comes, I ask you not to rise as the same one who lay down the night before. The outer world may look identical. The light may fall upon the same walls. The same sounds may drift through your window. And yet, inwardly, everything is different. For the seed has been planted, and the one who planted it no longer belongs to the old state. Do not leap from the bed searching the room for proof. Do not test the silence to see whether the miracle has already spoken. Do not turn your eyes immediately to the world as though it were the judge of what you have done in secret. For the world is not the judge. It is the witness, and a witness always speaks later. Rise gently. There is no urgency now. There is nothing to chase. There is nothing to demand. The work that mattered has already been performed in the unseen. As you move into the day, let your first awareness be a quiet knowing. It is done, not as a shout, not as a forced declaration, but as a settled inner posture, like the calm that follows a decision that no longer wavers. You may feel the old habits of thought. Try to return. The old questions may knock softly at the door of your mind. Has it worked? When will it show? What if I imagined wrongly? Do not argue with these voices. Do not wrestle with them. Simply turn your attention away, as one turns away from an echo that no longer belongs to the present moment. You do not need to suppress doubt. You simply outgrow it by staying loyal to the new state. Walk through your day as one who already carries the fulfillment invisibly within. If you have declared abundance, walk with the ease of one who is provided for, even if the purse still looks light. If you have declared love, let your manner be softened by the quiet certainty of being chosen, even if no message yet arrives. If you have declared freedom, let your shoulders drop, let your breath deepen, let your steps slow with the dignity of one who is no longer chasing escape. Do not perform this state. Do not act it out with exaggeration. Let it express itself naturally through tone, posture, and inner calm. The power is not in display. It is in possession. The world does not respond to outward drama. It responds to inward conviction. You will notice, as you persist in this dignity, that your reactions begin to change. Things that once provoked fear or impatience will lose their sharpness. Delays will no longer feel like threats, only like intervals. Conversations will unfold without the old tension. Even disappointments will carry less weight, because your center of gravity has shifted inward. This is one of the great signs that the assumption has taken root. You are no longer living at the mercy of appearances. You are living from a deeper axis. The outer no longer defines you. It reports to you. And here is the great temptation of the morning: to check, to measure, to scan the horizon for evidence. Resist that temptation gently, not with force, but with understanding. When you check, you imply that you do not yet have. When you measure, you imply doubt. When you search for evidence, you postpone its arrival. Imagine a woman who has conceived a child. She does not wake each morning demanding that the child already stand before her. She moves through her days with quiet assurance, even though nothing is yet visible. She does not search her body for proof in panic. She trusts the hidden growth, and because she trusts it, the growth continues undisturbed. So it is with you. The unseen is now active. The bridge of incidents has already begun to form, though you may not yet recognize its first quiet movements. To remain undisturbed is your protection. To remain calm is your power. Carry yourself, then, not as one who is hoping for change, but as one who is allowing change to complete its appointed course. There is a vast difference between waiting in anxiety and waiting in faith. Anxiety tightens the body. Faith softens it. Anxiety watches the clock. Faith forgets time. Anxiety demands signs. Faith rests without them. Move through the day with inner composure. Let your words be unhurried. Let your decisions be gentle. Let your reactions be slower than they once were. This is not passivity. This is sovereignty. You are no longer ruled by the immediate. You are anchored in the eternal. If circumstances arise that seem to contradict your assumption, do not fight them. Do not declare them enemies. Simply see them as part of the rearrangement. The bridge does not always look like the destination while it is being built. Sometimes it looks like disorder before it reveals design. You may be led into conversations you did not plan. You may be nudged into directions you did not anticipate. You may feel drawn to act in ways that seem unrelated to your desire. Do not dismiss these movements too quickly. Often the bridge speaks through impulse, through timing, through quiet invitation. Above all, protect your inner dignity. Do not return to the posture of pleading. Do not bow again to the image of lack. Do not shrink back into the old identity out of habit. You are no longer asking to become. You are allowing the world to catch up with what you have already claimed. Carry yourself as one who knows without needing to prove. Speak as one who trusts without needing to convince. Walk as one who possesses without needing to display. And when at last the outer world reflects the change, and it will, you will not feel surprised. You will feel recognized. You will not say, "It finally happened." You will say, softly within yourself, "Of course," for you knew it before the world agreed. You knew it in the night when no eye could see and no voice could confirm, when only imagination stood as witness. That knowing is the true awakening. Few remain when the hour grows this deep. Many begin the journey with curiosity, some with desperation, others with passing interest, but only a small number continue walking. When the path grows quiet, when there is no spectacle to entertain them, when only truth remains. If you are still here now, I tell you plainly, you are not among the many. You would not have remained unless something within you already recognized what your outer mind only begins to grasp. You did not arrive here by accident. Long before this moment, long before these words touched your ears, a movement was already taking place within you. A subtle dissatisfaction with the old explanations, a quiet hunger that the outer world could not satisfy, a sense that there must be something more, something truer than struggle and waiting and blind hope. That hunger is the sign of awakening. It always appears before memory returns. And now, having walked this path together from the illusion of delay, through the power of the word, through midnight, through assumption, through feeling, through surrender, you stand at the edge of a new way of being. You may not yet see the outer change, but something far more important has already shifted. Your idea of who you are has begun to loosen from its old anchor. This alone is the miracle. Most will never question the voice that says, "You are what the world tells you that you are." Most will never pause long enough to notice that their own inner speech has been quietly shaping their fate for years. Most will never discover that they have been praying all their lives, just not consciously. But you have stayed long enough to see the mechanism. You have heard the law where others only hear chants. And because you have heard, you are no longer bound in the same way. I do not flatter you when I say this. I simply state the law. Awareness changes the relationship. The moment a man discovers that fire burns, he can no longer place his hand in it innocently. And the moment you discover that I am is the creative name, you can no longer speak of yourself without consequence. From this night forward, your words will weigh more than they did before. Your inner conversations will carry greater charge. Your assumptions will no longer be harmless daydreams. They will be acts of creation. And because of this, you now walk with greater authority. Whether you feel it yet or not, you may still feel human doubt at times. You may still feel the old reactions sometimes rise by habit. This does not disqualify you. It simply means you are learning to walk with new sight. Even a man who has awakened from sleep still blinks at the light before his eyes adjust. Be gentle with this unfolding. Do not demand perfection of yourself. Do not turn the law into another burden. The law is not here to judge you. It is here to free you. Each time you remember who you are, even briefly, you loosen another thread of the old illusion. And now, before we part, I leave you with a final impression. Not as teaching, not as instruction, but as a living seed for your deeper mind. Tonight, as you lie down, tomorrow, as you rise, in moments when the world grows loud again, in moments when uncertainty tries to creep back, let these words move softly beneath your thinking. I am already what I desire to be. I am already chosen. I am already guided. I am already sustained. I am already becoming visible to myself. Let these words sink beneath effort. Let them pass below logic. Let them find their place where decisions are born without sound. You do not need to repeat them endlessly. You do not need to force them. You only need to allow them to be true long enough for the old story to grow unfamiliar. And one day, and it will seem like an ordinary day, you will realize you no longer think as you once did. You no longer react as you once did. You no longer fear as you once did. The outer world will reflect this later, but the inner shift will have already happened quietly, without announcement. And in that moment, you will smile. Not because something finally worked, but because you will remember that it was always working. I will not tell you to chase signs. I will not tell you to hurry. I will not tell you to prove anything. I will only say this: walk gently now. Speak consciously now, assume wisely now, and trust that what you have claimed in the silence will answer you in the open. You have not reached the end of something. You have returned to the beginning of yourself,